Before we jump into the next clip, I just want to tell you real quick, we got a new audio network. Go to tyt.com/audio and get all of our new podcasts.
An editor with the Daily Caller, a conservative news outlet, decided to attend a rally where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was speaking at. Now, Ocasio-Cortez, of course, is the progressive candidate who beat an establishment Democrat in New York. It was a stunning upset. A lot of people didn't expect it, except for here at TYT, where we totally expected it. And so conservatives now are trying to figure out what's going on. Because they're like, wait a minute, she is identifying as a democratic socialist. Isn't socialism bad? Haven't we done enough fear mongering about government programs? Like, let's try to figure out what's going on. So this one reporter, she's actually an editor at the Daily Caller. Her name's Virginia Kruta, decides to attend this event. And then she goes on Fox News to explain what she found. And she's trying really hard to make it sound bad. And she's failing miserably. Without further ado, let's look at the first video.
Tell us why you went to her rally. What was the interest?
Thanks for having me. Well, I went kind of to see what the fuss was about, really, because, I mean, I've been to conservative rallies before. I've been to a Trump speech. I've been to a Ted Cruz rally when he was running for president. And I just kind of wanted to see, why the message was resonating, because really, the socialist message is gaining steam within the Democrat Party.
So based upon what you saw, why are people drawn to this message?
Well, I was listening to them talk to Ocasio-Cortez and also to Cori Bush, who she was stumping for in St. Louis. And they say things, I mean, they talk about things that everybody wants, especially like if you're a parent. They talk about education for your kids, health care for your kids, the things that you want.
Yep, that's what they do. They talk about things that you'd want.
She should have gone to a Bernie rally over the past couple of years.
It's so good.
I went to many. He talked about that stuff.
I wanted to figure out what the fuss was about, so I was shocked to find that they were talking about issues, economic issues that impact Americans, and they addressed those issues and found solutions for them. Yeah.
So I think, look, it's funny, I agree. Yeah. And when we talked about it on the Damage Report, obviously it's a funny thing, but I want to give her at least a little bit of credit.
No, I want to give her a lot of credit.
Yes.
Because the fact that she went to that event.
With apparently somewhat of an open mind.
Yes, that is something that needs to be applauded, and so I do give her credit for that.
Yeah, like she's not swayed, she didn't sign up for the DSA or anything, but she is willing to at least admit that she understands why this message is gaining hold in a lot of people. I think her argument for why it's the case that you have to ignore all this stuff about how it would be paid for and all that, I think is a little bit disingenuous. I would like to see that same sort of skepticism applied to when the Republican Party says, hey, here's $1.5 trillion worth of tax cuts we'd love to give people.
Exactly.
How are you gonna pay for that? We'll worry about it some other day. So that bothers me a little bit, but she's at least willing to make somewhat of the case. And for many of these people who are watching that early Fox and Friends, this is the only place that they're gonna hear anything about the rally. So that is a far more fair description. It's not entirely, we're gonna play more of the video, but that's a fairer description of it than they will ever be exposed to on Fox News.
Exactly, and even if you disagree with the other party or some candidates' policy proposals, hearing them out is important, right? And so I think that there's far less of that in the media these days and a lot more, either it's fear mongering or mischaracterizations of what the other side wants. And so all of us need to do a better job in really understanding what the other side is saying and don't pay close attention to, the squeaky wheel basicly. Because you hear the squeaky wheel and you think that that's representative of the party, and that's not necessarily true, right? And so I think what happened with the right wing's response to Ocasio-Cortez was, oh my God, this person wants Cuba-like socialism where the government completely controls the means of production. That is not what she's calling for. She is specifically talking about education. She's talking about healthcare. She's talking about the fundamental basics that people need to have fulfilling, stable, healthy lives. And I think anyone who sits and listens to what Ocasio-Cortez has to say about these issues and what her policies are can't deny that they are popular with the majority of Americans. I mean, you look at the approval rating for Medicare. Look at the response of Republican constituents in some of these states when there were threats of cutting Medicare or cutting Social Security. Yeah. Those are popular government programs. And you can't, if you're on the right wing, you can't keep denying that they are, because people like them. And as soon as you talk about cutting them, there's usually some form of protest.
And I will say, for the audience who's watched now this, and you might remember the Sean Hannity attempt to take her down, where he put up a list of the most appealing platform for a politician I've ever seen. Enjoy these times while they last, because the Republican attack machine will come to grips with democratic socialism. They'll come up with some lies to tell about it. We're in the honeymoon period right now where they can't help but make it sound good, but they'll figure something out. I do want to just tweak a couple things in what the assistant editor for the Daily Caller said. Just because she seems like a person with an open mind, it's not a socialist message, it's a democratic socialist message. And it's not even a particularly extreme one, it's what democratic politics should have been for literally decades at this point. It's not socialism, stop saying that it's socialism. And also, it's not the Democrat Party, it's the Democratic Party. That is the most lingering, immature little move where they don't want to say the word democratic, because then you would apply the positive connotations you have with democracy to the party.
Right, the little
so they say Democrat. That is something Rush Limbaugh has been doing for decades. It is so childish. It's what a baby does rhetorically. Stop saying it, it's not the name of the party.
I don't know, it doesn't bother me.
It's just my whole life, for 15 years probably, I've been seeing people in media do this as a
You're only
stupid.
15?
No, but I'm saying my whole life where I've actually been paying attention to it. It's just a stupid little immature thing to do.
All right, well let's hear.
And I'm calling it the Republic Party from now on. That's how stupid it is. It is exactly that stupid.
So let's hear a little bit more from Kruta and what she experienced at this event.
You know, if you're not really paying attention to how they're going to pay for it, or the rest of that, it's easy to fall into that trap and say, my kids deserve this. And, well, maybe the government should be responsible for helping me with that.
Virginia, as a conservative, when you're sitting in that audience or standing in that audience and you're listening to that message, how did it make you feel? Were you angry? Were you more drawn to that?
I was mostly uncomfortable because I was surrounded by a group of people who were talking about how they had gotten involved because they were tired of being angry all the time. And it seems like so much effort to be angry about everything instead of to focus on what you could do to change it.
But
that's what they're doing.
But that's what they're doing, right?
I think she sort of understands that, but sort of not.
Yeah.
Like that is what, like the supporters of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Brent Weld and others are the people who are sick of just being angry and are doing something about it by engaging with the Democratic Party and taking control of it.
And I love it. And you're like, you know what, Kruta, you do you, boo. You keep going to these events. Like,
I'm generally in favor of
just open yourself up to different experiences, right? I mean, you never know what you can find. And look, she works at the Daily Caller. And you're working at that organization, you're going to be pushed in a certain direction. I've seen complete mischaracterizations of people on the left from this very news organization, this outlet. But I think that she did a fair job. I think that if you do further investigation, you'll figure out exactly how these candidates propose to pay for the very programs that you seem to be in favor of. Right, that most Americans seem to be in favor of. The only thing that you hear from the right and the naysayers is how are they going to pay for it? And it doesn't matter how many times Bernie Sanders specifically outlined how he would pay for his programs. It doesn't matter how clearly it's written on Alexandria Cortez's website. It doesn't matter how often they talk about how they're going to pay for it. It's going to be the one and only way that conservatives can attack these candidates and these politicians. They have nothing else because these programs are popular and they can be paid for.
It's ridiculous. To say it again, were you asking how we're going to pay for the tax cuts? I mean, those tax cuts could have paid for every year, the free tuition paid, 4 years of public college or trade school or whatever. That would be a tiny little fraction of what we just gave away. You could rip out every single lead pipe in the goddamn country. You could rebuild Puerto Rico. You could do all of this stuff and you wouldn't have even hit half of what it costs to hand that money to the 1% in corporations.
Actually, I didn't even know this myself until recently. The Trump era tax cuts are 2 times as expensive as the Affordable Care Act. I mean, just to give you an idea, and you have to ask yourself, what are our priorities? Tax cuts for the wealthy so they can do record stock buybacks and make themselves even more wealthy? or providing healthcare so Americans don't have to decide whether or not they're gonna go to the doctor and get the treatment they need or pay for the food for their children.
Well, and think about the economic, the long-term economic impact of, well, we could pay for people's college education so that when they leave, they aren't indebted for 20 to 30 years and spending a significant portion of their income on just paying that back rather than actually putting money into the economy. Or we could do the tax cuts, which we did early this year. We just found out that wages fell 2% immediately afterward, breaking the trend where wages had slowly been creeping slightly up and now they're back down again because of it. But I will say, again, you should read her article too on the Daily Caller and then never return to the site again. But you should read her article because she outlines a couple more of the positive messages that she heard there that she found to be appealing. And she ends it by saying, "There but for the grace of God go I," acknowledging that on some level she found the argument very appealing. And look, she's being open-minded there. She's also a writer for the Daily Caller, which means she is a committed conservative. And she said, "There but for the grace of God go I." Regular conservatives, some non-zero portion are gonna eat this stuff up and they are going to cross over and they are going to vote for Democratic candidates that have this sort of message, that actually appeal to them with empathy, to their sense of dignity, to economic possibility. It is going to change everything. And I think that those hosts on Fox and Friends can sort of feel it. They don't want to acknowledge it just yet, but Sean Hannity, I mean, he's not nervous for nothing. They know what's coming.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.